Hey, Hound Dogs, I'm David Hankins,
And I'm Paul Hankins.
and welcome to On the Air with Power Squared. This week, we're going to do something a little different. I think we've done this before. We're going to talk about comics that we like, and we're going to start with Watchmen.
Yes.
So, The Watchmen was a comic book that was written by Alan Moore, illustrated by Dave Gibbons, and colored by John Higgins. It was for DC back in 1987.
Yeah. Well, 1986 to 1987.
Right, okay. And was considered, or is considered now, to be kind of one of the big ones that come out of that decade.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to talk a little bit about why it's considered so important or significant?
Well, we're not experts
No.
on Watchmen, but it's significant because at the time it was this. Well, I guess even now, it's a deconstruction of superheroes. These characters aren't necessarily people that are role models. They do morally negative or morally gray things. Like Dr. Manhattan is also a kind of person who's just detached from reality because of how powerful he is. And it also is very visually dense. It played around with a lot of visual themes and panel layouts and just panel content.
Right.
And it also had a comic within a comic, Tales from the Black Freighter, that kind of reinforced a lot of the thematic elements of what was happening in the comic at the time.
Right. Wow. Very good. You went to college. Yeah. So we were actually looking at some issues pre-show. We read this a number of years ago, so it's not like it's fresh on our memories.
And that's why we're not experts.
And we're not claiming to be. We're just having the things we like. So if we say something that you disagree with, well, you're probably right. We're looking at some of the issues, actually the trade before the show, and we're noticing that the layouts are the panels are pretty standard. It's what's in the panels that's really the
And then there's I forget which issue number it is, but specifically the issue Fearful Symmetry does something unique where the entire issue is laid out in a mirrored panel layout.
Okay. Yeah, so there are things that you can do with it even within a standard, that would be revolutionary at the time.
You could tell from reading it that they very carefully constructed.
Right.
So how did we become aware of Watchmen?
Yeah, well, there was a movie going to be made about it, which we kind of heard about, but the actual comic itself, we didn't really become aware of it until 2008. We were going to Comic-Con, and I think the first panel we were planning on seeing was Tite Kubo from Bleach, who was making his only U.S. trip.
Yeah, it was a rare American appearance, so it was a big deal, and that's why I was interested in that.
Right. And I guess there was a long line, so you kind of, which has become a pattern for us. If you want to see somebody really special, you need to sit through some other panels to get there.
Yeah.
And that's sort of a standard operating procedure for us now. Back then, we were just sort of, wide-eyed and bushy-tailed or whatever. But we ended up sitting. So the first panel we saw was watching The Watchmen, which is this book, which Dave Gibbons is one of the co-authors of, I guess. And he was there along with Chip Kidd. They were talking about this book. And everybody's like, ooh, like, okay, so maybe we should actually
read
it. So, of course, we have the book, but I think we got that after the event. So, we found the trade paper.
Back.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think you and me and Trevor all read this.
Yeah.
And so it's, and this is, of course, kind of you're waiting for something to be collected, and this is obviously old.
Yeah.
So we ended up eventually buying the individual issues. I guess the original issues.
Yeah.
And as an example, here's one of 12. And we had it signed by Dave Gibbons in 2014 at Comic-Con as well. So he was there, I think, hyping something else. And I was like, I have all these issues. Could you sign them? And I believe the colorist was also there, but I didn't have any clue how to get a hold of him. So anyway, so that's... But
that's still pretty cool.
Yeah. So, a little brush with greatness. So, prepping for the movie, we read the trade, and we also watched
a motion comic.
Right. Which is over here somewhere. What do I do with it? Anyway, down here. We watched the motion comic Watchmen. It's in here. We ended up getting the collection. So if you're listening to this, we're showing things. Yeah. This is the Blu-ray of the
motion comic.
Yeah, which we watched prior to the movie, and then we bought the set. It came with it, so that's where it's in that. And then we, I want to say we also, did we watch Black Freighter came after that?
Yeah, Black Freighter thing came after the movie.
Right. So we actually watched the motion comic for that.
And I believe we also watched Under the Hood.
Right.
When it came out, of course.
Yes. We were very into it at the time. So we saw the movie 3 times.
Yes.
Different cuts each time.
The first time was the original theatrical cut,
which is 162 minutes. And of course, Zack Snyder was the director.
Yes.
So you know there has to be a longer version somewhere. And there was. And I want to say it was this, we were talking about this earlier, so I'm not making this up, but we saw like a Harry Potter movie in the day, and then went to see this at the Chinese 6.
Yeah.
They had the director's cut showing. I think my wife Nancy, I think, was kind of pushing us to go see it at the time. So we went and saw that, and then we bought the even longer collection that we're just showing you. So we have the ultimate cut, which is like 186 minutes long. But that also includes...
It also includes the Tales from the Black Freighter incorporated into it in the same spot where it was in the original comic. And they even filmed extra shots of the character from the comic reading Tales from the Black Freighter to transition into it.
Right. So we were very much immersed in this.
Yeah.
So what did we think of the movie?
Well, it's been a long time since we saw it, but I remember generally liking it. What helped was some of the casting was really good, like Jackie Earle Haley as Rorschach.
Yeah,
so he was the perfect casting out of everyone in there.
Yeah. And I think delivered, what may be our favorite line of the film.
I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. But I didn't mind that. I generally didn't mind that the movie stuck close to the comic, because that was kind of the point. So I guess I just appreciated it for what it was. It had some really good sequences in it, I think. And it was, I guess it's interesting what you get when you use the comic as storyboards.
Yeah, so basically, didn't Zack Snyder use the comic book as a storyboard? So I guess very, very close.
Yeah.
Though he did change the ending.
Yeah. Spoilers? Or no spoilers?
We're going to go on the fact that you've probably heard of this before, and if you haven't, cover your ears.
Yeah. So in the comic, it ends with Ozymandias summoning a giant squid thing, which is supposed to unite humanity against a common like extraterrestrial threat. In the movie, that was changed to turning mankind against Dr. Manhattan. I remember the explanation at the time was Zack Snyder himself said he loved the giant squid in the comic, but he didn't think that would. He thought that in the movie that would clash with the tone of the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean,
which I can respect that decision based on his explanation.
So the whole.
Though I can definitely understand why some people wouldn't like it.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, it's kind of interesting that you hewn so close to the comic book and then veer off at the very end. But
Yeah.
I would imagine that you could pull off a giant squid with
Yeah.
CGI and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
Well, certainly now you could.
Yeah. So maybe they'll remake it. Anybody else performance that stood out for you?
Let's see. Off the top of my head, probably the actors for Dr. Manhattan and Ozymandias I thought were good.
Mm-hmm. I did too.
But again, it's been a while since I've seen the performances.
Yeah, but it was very well done, the
Yeah.
movie, and I'm sure that's kind of what led to them handing the DC universe over to him.
Yeah.
With that in 300.
Yeah, well, 300. He did 300 before he did Watchmen, because I remember in Watchmen he actually snuck in a 300 reference by having the number 300 on a apartment door.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Very subtle, but yeah. So I would imagine that led to them saying, "Hey, you could do this.
Yeah.
Here's the keys to the kingdom," and kind of crashed and burned. Anyway.
Interestingly, Alan Moore himself did not approve of the movie adaptation. Then again, he doesn't approve of most adaptations of his work.
Right.
However, the one adaptation of it that he did approve of was this really funny Harry Partridge cartoon called Saturday Morning Watchmen. And based on all the jokes in it, it shows that Harry has a very deep understanding of Watchmen. Like, it's... Imagine, hey, take Watchmen and try to present it as a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, so I mean, these basically, as you point out, these aren't it's sort of like you don't want to meet your hero, is the old saying. 'Cause
Yeah.
these are not, these are not really
Likeable people.
Yeah, they're not really Saturday morning cartoon people, obviously either.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you're you're watching Adult Swim or something. Okay. So, Watchmen continued after the fact, and we got. At least I was interested in the Before the Watchmen series that came out.
Yeah.
And I bought every variant and all that was out at our local comic book store. I'm sure there were other variants that I never saw, but I did buy them all, and I did get some of those signed by some of the writers. And I guess one of them we got was Lynn Wein, who's now left us. It was kind of, I always thought it was kind of interesting. He's kind of a local guy.
Yeah.
And he was pretty willing to, talk to you and stuff. It was very nice.
Yeah.
But so we had some of these. What was it Before the Watchmen? Is it all still Watchmen?
So while you're looking for
something,
what did you think of Before Watchmen?
I enjoyed it. I like kind of history.
Yeah.
And it was sort of this idea that you were kind of getting into the history of. So these are some of the Before Watchmen books. You were getting into the sort of the history of something. And it sort of seemed like, because they sort of hint at, they're not the first Watchmen.
Yeah.
And so you kind of wonder what went on before. And so these kind of explained that pretty well. and they get into some of it, some of the characters, backstories of some of the characters, so it's a little more involved. It was very enjoyable. I enjoyed reading it, keeping up with it. But when that was over, I kind of
stopped caring. Stopped following it.
Yeah, the comic book continued with Doomsday Clock.
Yeah,
and I kept thinking I'll just wait for a trade.
Yeah,
and I kind of forgot about it. I mean, I know it's there. I just haven't.
From my understanding, Doomsday Clock was basically DC trying to integrate the Watchmen cast into the DC universe, including trying to use that as an explanation for how the New 52 happened. I'm not going to spoil how.
Okay.
I haven't read it myself,
right.
but I read about
right.
it.
Right. So we should, at some point, I guess, maybe buy the trades and catch up with that.
Yeah.
But in this day and age of franchises, nothing goes done or unsequeled or whatever you want to say. And so they didn't make another movie, but they did make a mini series or a series.
Yeah, for HBO.
Yeah. Which maybe it fit in better to the Doomsday Clock, but it just sort of was. It just seemed so totally not related to anything had remembered from Watchmen. You know, and so I really never watched it.
Yeah, the only thing I really know about is that apparently it's supposed to be a sequel to Watchmen, but I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, well, it's different characters. I mean, they killed off most of the main characters, or a lot of them.
Yeah,
and so I was just like, well, how do you continue the story with? So I think they introduced a lot of new characters, and it just sort of seemed like I don't really.
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point, it's sort of like with the Marvel Universe. We watched all those movies, and now I'm not really sure I really want to keep watching too many of them going forward. You got my $1.
Yeah.
So,
like with the MCU, we sort of felt like we did our due diligence.
Yeah, we watched them all, even the ones we thought were kind of like homework.
Yeah.
At some point it was just, okay, I'm done.
That's a story for another time.
Yes. Yes, it is. So let's talk a little bit about what do you think about Watchmen?
In general, I think Watchmen is a good read. It's not for everyone, obviously, because of the content in it.
It's a little more adult.
Yeah, but if you can handle it, then it's a good comic to look at now, because, well, I don't know how much of the Cold War stuff is still relevant, but it's an interesting, darker take on superheroes without trying, like, too hard to be dark. It's just Alan Moore was exploring a different side of superheroes.
And it was also interesting, I mean, it's based in an altered reality.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the Cold War is going on, but Nixon was out of the picture by the time this would have taken place.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. I mean, I don't mind it when they sort of change things a little bit to make the story, because it's obviously fantasy happen, but that was kind of an interesting take. That it's like it just seemed weird for me to have Nixon still be there, but.
And there are some iconic moments that are worth reading for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, towards the end, for example, Ozymandias saying, like, I already did it 35 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was a really powerful moment, and it's still a powerful moment that gets referenced to this day.
Okay. So, here's the question to bring it all back home. Has Watchmen had any influence on Power Squared?
I think in a small way it has.
Okay.
Flipping through the trade again after a few years, we noticed it can get a little wordy, but not excessively wordy. Like,
are you saying that Power Squared is wordy?
like not perhaps excessively wordy like our
the
earlier issues.
The early issues are very wordy.
But we took what Alan Moore said about word balloons and panels to heart, and we tried to control the amount of dialogue and have it be enough to have an impact without overdoing it.
Right. And even now when we're going over the thumbnails and the pages, we still look at the script and go, oh, we could take that word out and that word out.
Yeah.
So count the words and make sure we're not going over, was it 25?
Yeah.
So yeah, it has had a little effect on us. And I also think that we're kind of, our heroes are a little different than your normal heroes. As these guys they're not, irreprehensible characters, but they're not your typical superheroes.
Right.
Our guys don't dress up in costumes or capes and that kind of stuff. They just sort of do it. So, which I think is kind of, taking it a little step further and making it a little more, different. So, I think of course, anything you read does have some sort of, it kind of ends up in your head somewhere.
Yeah. Like the book I'm writing, I actually referenced that scene I mentioned with Ozymandias, right, because I thought it would actually fit in well with what I guess you could say the bad guy was doing.
Okay. Well, that's all. It permeates.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we would recommend, if you have a chance to read it, to pick it up. So next week we're planning on, because this is the Friday before Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to go to the local comic book store and see if we can pick up 2 or 3 free things.
Yes.
And then next week talk about them.
Yeah.
Review them. So, what did we pick and why, and what do we think of the story? Did it draw you in? The whole idea, I assume, of Free Comic Book Day is to get you to want to read more.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a jumping in point, hopefully.
Yeah.
So we'll find out.
Yeah. So.
All right.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, consider liking and subscribing if you liked it. Helps the algorithm, and it helps us know what works.
Right. All right. So until next time, I'm David Hankins.
I'm Paul Hankins.
And you've been on the air with Power Squared.